Hello, I'm Alex Fensham, the General Manager here at Habibi Film Rentals. Today we are privileged to review the new DZO Pavo 2x Anamorphic Primes. The set we've received for testing is the Silver Flare edition, and unfortunately does not include the 100mm in the set. So this review will just focus on the 28, 32, 40, 55, and 75mm focal lengths. We have been following the development of these lenses ever since they were first announced by DZOFilm. We carry quite a bit of DZO glass in our inventory, including the Vespid Primes, Pictor Zooms, and Cata Zooms, and we've always been very impressed with the lenses from DZO in terms of optical quality, build quality, and cost. Anamorphic is a different game, however, and we've been curious to see how the DZO Pavo Anamorphics compare to their direct competitors in the market of affordable 2x Super 35 Anamorphic Primes. The main competition for these lenses, in my opinion, are the Atlas Orion Anamorphics and the Laowa Proteus Anamorphics. So let's dive into this review. We will take an in-depth look at the design, build quality, optical quality, and image produced by the Pavos, as well as trying to make some comparisons to their direct competition in the market. The Pavo Anamorphics are compact 2x anamorphic lenses with Super 35 sensor coverage. The initial focal lengths released are 28, 32, 40, 55, 75, and 100. As I mentioned in the intro, the set we were given access to for testing unfortunately doesn't include the 100mm. All the lenses are T2.1 across the board except for the 100mm, which is T2.4, and they're extremely compact for 2x anamorphic cinema lenses, weighing between 2.6 pounds to 3.6 pounds. The lenses can come in either blue or neutral flare. The ones we've been testing here are the neutral flare variant, which is my personal preference for anamorphics. They all have a standard front diameter of 95mm and the inner threaded diameter of 86mm. The lenses include a toolless back focus adjustment, which is incredibly convenient and easy to use. Although, with any toolless back focus adjustment, there's always the risk of it slipping or needing readjustment. All lenses in the set have a 270-degree focus throw, and all have a very impressive close focus distance for 2x anamorphic primes. The lenses have interchangeable PL or EF mounts, allowing them to be used in a wide variety of camera systems. The lenses cost $5,499 individually, and you can get a set of 6 for $30,999, making them very affordable. As I mentioned in my intro, we carry a large number of DZO lenses here at Habibi Film Rentals, and I've never yet had a mechanical issue with any of them. It seems that the Pavos continue that tradition of incredible build quality that we've come to expect from DZOFilm. My only minor nitpick on the design of the housing is that it would have been nice to have phosphorescent witness marks that would glow in the dark, but that's a very minor thing. Overall, the design and build quality of these lenses is extremely good, close to perfect in my mind, and given the fact that they are 2x anamorphic primes, the compact design and lightweight is very, very impressive. Alright, let's get into the most important aspect of any lens review, the image quality. We'll break this down into several categories: sharpness, bokeh, color tone and matching, flaring, focus breathing, and distortion and overall character of the lenses. So perhaps the biggest flaw with the Pavo Anamorphics is their sharpness wide open. At T2.1 on all the focal lengths we've tested, they're quite soft, definitely getting into unusable territory depending on one's personal preference for softness. Personally, I like softness in my lenses and tend to embrace the look and would shoot these lenses wide open depending on the project. However, I know many DPs who would consider this level of sharpness unusable. All the focal lengths sharpen up considerably when you stop down, with most being quite sharp starting at T4. I was curious to see how the sharpness of these lenses compares to the Atlas Orions, which are known for being quite soft wide open. We performed some chart tests comparing the Pavos with the Atlas Orions at a range of T-stops to do some direct sharpness comparisons. Our conclusion is that overall, the sharpness of the Pavos wide open is very comparable with the Atlas Orions wide open, with some of the focal lengths being slightly softer than the Orions and some being slightly sharper. Again, I know many DPs who are happy to shoot the Orions wide open, and many DPs who find them to be too soft and will only start using them at T28 or T4. If you're familiar with the Atlas Orions, you'll be familiar with the sharpness you'll get from the Pavos. If we compare the Pavos to the Laowa Proteus 2x anamorphics, the Proteus are much sharper than both the Pavos and Orions. They're actually really impressively sharp for a budget 2x anamorphic lens. It should also be noted that the Pavos have quite a substantial field curvature, making the plane of focus very curved and contributing heavily to focus fall-off, which on one hand gives some gorgeous edge fall-off, but on the other hand affects the edge sharpness considerably, especially on the wider focal lengths. Overall, when it comes to sharpness, the DZO Pavos are quite soft wide open, and if this is not your preference, or a very sharp image is needed for your project, you'll need to consider shooting them at a deep stop of T4 to T5.6, or considering a sharper lens alternative like the Proteus anamorphics. The bokeh on the Pavos is, in my opinion, breathtaking. All focal lengths have stunning swirly bokeh that is just jaw-dropping and reminiscent of the legendary Helios lens. I'm really impressed that all the focal lengths in the set I tested have consistently swirly bokeh, and to me this is one of the most special things about these lenses. Of course, the swirly bokeh translates into aberrations in the shape of the bokeh across the image plane, with some pretty severe coma occurring towards the edges. The coma does reduce as you stop down, but you're going to struggle to have the Pavos produce perfect oval bokeh across the image plane. For me personally, this is well worth it, and I'm deeply in love with the swirly nature of the bokeh these lenses create. It really helps separate the foreground from the background, and draws your eyes naturally to the foreground elements of your image. Like most DZOFilm lenses, the Pavos are slightly warm, which personally I like for rendering skin tones. The color matching across the set is very consistent, with only slight variances between focal lengths, most of which cannot be seen by an untrained eye. The lenses do shift in color a bit as you stop down, with them tending to lean a bit green wide open and shift more magenta as you stop down. However, this shift is consistent across all focal lengths, and any two focal lengths at the same stop will have similar color reproduction. Interestingly, the Pavos have very little chromatic aberration even when wide open, which surprised me considering the Atlas Orion anamorphics tend to have quite a bit of chromatic aberration wide open, which cleans up as you stop down. The flaring on the Pavos is pretty smooth and consistent across all focal lengths. You get a nice anamorphic streak flare, but it's quite smooth and not as defined as some anamorphic flares can be. There are some vertical mechanical flares from the lens housing, which interestingly are blue flares and not neutral, and an oval halo flare towards the center of the image. As you approach the edges, you get a pretty subtle caustic flare. There's not a lot of ghosting on any of the lenses, and overall the flare is quite controlled across the set. In real-world testing, I was having trouble getting the lenses to flare from natural light sources that were not coming strongly down the barrel. There's also not a lot of spot flares present on the Pavos. Overall, the flares in the Pavos are quite smooth and somewhat subtle, giving you the classic anamorphic flare you seek when needed, but otherwise not being very temperamental. The focus breathing on the Pavos is impressively controlled across the set. I was expecting them to be very breathy, based on their size and the fact that they're 2x anamorphics, but I was pleasantly surprised by the amount of breathing. There's more breathing on the longer focal lengths, but overall, I felt like the focus breathing was acceptable across the entire set. And in terms of direct comparables, I would say that the Pavos are more breathy than the Laowa Proteus, but less breathy than some of the Atlas Orion focal lengths. In terms of distortion, all the Pavos have quite a bit of barrel distortion, which is obviously more pronounced on the wider focal lengths, and gets flatter the longer the lens, with the 75mm being close to flat. The focus falloff and illumination falloff is also quite pronounced the wider the focal length. The amount of distortion is similar to the comparable focal lengths of the Atlas Orion set, and it's pretty in line with what you'd expect for 2x anamorphics. These lenses are definitely curved plane, and it's clear that the compact design hasn't allowed DZO to optically correct for this curvature, which translates into barrel distortion, a curved focus plane, and that gorgeous swirly bokeh and edge fall off in both focus and illumination. Overall, the character of the Pavo Anamorphics is dramatic, distinct, and bold. Personally, as someone who's really into lens character, I absolutely love them. They're reminiscent of vintage classic anamorphic lenses, and combined with the incredible swirly bokeh and compact form factor, I think there's a lot to love about these lenses. Depending on personal preferences, they may be a bit much for some people, but for DPs who like to embrace lens character and love the organic quality of images caused by aberrations and love the vintage anamorphic look, the Pavos are a great choice. When comparing them to their direct competitors in the affordable 2x anamorphic market, I would say that they don't have the impressive objective sharpness and raw image quality of the Laowa Proteus, and that they're much more comparable to the Atlas Orion anamorphics as anamorphics with a lot of character. Personally, I love the look of the Pavos, and I've fallen deeply in love with the way that they resolve faces and separate the foreground from the background, drawing your eye to the framed subject and feeling organic and smooth while doing so. This intense, unique character, paired with the build quality and compact design, make them an impressive feat of optical engineering. And I think that a lot of people are going to shoot some incredible images on these lenses. We hope you enjoyed this review. It was an absolute pleasure getting to test these exciting new lenses. A special thanks to DV Shop and DZOFilm for arranging this demo set for us. If you'd like to see more gear reviews and keep up to date with our rental offerings, make sure to subscribe and follow us on our social media channels and at www.habibifilmrentals.com. Thank you.